Welcome back to the most valuable 10 minutes in fantasy sports, where we go over the risers and fallers here on DraftKings today. On today's episode, we're going to be looking at a couple risers that I expect some significant gain in, and two other risers where I don't know if the gain's going to be there, but you probably want to get in before the market sentiment kind of permanently keeps them where they're going. We're going to look at the one faller that I think shouldn't be falling and is probably a pretty darn good value on DraftKings. And then we're going to look at our values in general and see what would be like the god tier start if we could make it happen based on some of the values. Let's get into it. First off, we're going to look at our risers. The first riser we're going to look at is Rashee Rice. You can see that he fell 12.7 picks in the last 30 days, and that's not including the positive two pick move over the last 7 days. So he's dropped probably about 14 to 15 picks or so in the last 30 in the 30 days before this recent kind of little bump up. That would put him at pick like 15 or so is where he was at one point in time. And so if we go and look at the wide receivers here, that would get him all the way up to where like Drake London is, basically him versus Drake London. And that was a decision point at the very beginning of the regular season of best ball after the NFL draft. And he's just kind of fallen down. I expect him to rise back up. I don't know if he'll get all the way back up to there because there's now a little bit more risk in his profile, but I don't see why he doesn't start challenging at least George Pickens and maybe even then Nico Collins and AJ Brown. And at that point in time, he's back to where he was before. So I do expect a good amount of movement in Rashee Rice. Get him now in the third round while you still can. Next up are two later picks at wide receiver. Those are Dontavian Wicks and A.D. Mitchell. They're getting a lot of buzz recently. Dontavian Wicks is said to maybe actually start out as the wide receiver two. And A.D. Mitchell, while he might not be the wide receiver one or wide receiver two, there's some expectation that he might get the most run of all the wide receivers as far as staying on the field the most. And he might be like a sacrificial role. But A.D. Mitchell's explosive enough to where he can probably get some rather nice targets, just created himself, even if he is kind of the sacrificial player. So they are potentially exciting players, and I could see them rising up. If we look to see where they're going right now, they're going right here at 188 and right here at 203. Now, I could see them both rising rather significantly depending on what the market kind of says. They could easily pass a bunch of players here. I'm not saying they should pass all of them, but they could easily pass players like Calvin Ridley, Tank Dell, Tyreek Hill, Jerry Jeudy, Trey Harris, Deebo Samuel if he doesn't actually get some positive news here, Stribling, Isaac Tesla. I think, and then after that, you even have like Flournoy and even probably someone I could see the passing more, Malik Washington. And then depending on what goes on, we got Williams over here too, who, if, for example, Deebo Samuel gets signed to Washington again, he probably starts rising, Williams starts falling. Or if Diggs gets signed to Washington, Diggs rises and Williams still falls or something like that. So I could see Williams falling either way. So you could definitely see a lot of players that both A.D. Mitchell and Dontavian Wicks could pass. I don't know if they will pass all of them. I don't know what the market's going to do with it, but I do see them both rising rather significantly. I can see them both getting into the 70s at the very least, like a round and a half for A.D. Mitchell and like 2 rounds for Dontavian Wicks or something like that. But I could even see them maybe getting into the 170s, something like that, depending on how that momentum goes. So those are two other players that I want to be looking at and probably targeting if I need wide receivers late in the draft. I'm not saying I want to have only them, but I think it maybe makes sense to target them over other players that probably aren't rising no matter what. So, for example, is Christian Kirk rising at all? Probably not. Is Cooper Kupp rising at all? Probably not. Is Calvin Ridley rising at all? Probably not. Is Tyreek Hill rising at all? Probably not based on what's going on right now. Is Jerry Jeudy rising at all? Probably not. Is so at least those ones right there. And then you could even look up here and say, again, if they start moving up, you could even argue again going over some of these players as well. Kind of like Flournoy, so I wouldn't go over him, but over some of these players, basically. Flournoy's getting his own buzz. He is a riser as well. If we look on the chart, where is he? I think he's a riser. Is he not a riser anymore? That's good. That's news. Good news to know. Okay, looks like he's not one of the top risers anymore. Maybe he's starting to slow down a bit. But there you go. Okay, so two players that I don't know if they have as much room to rise, but I think you maybe want to get in before the rise takes hold completely, and the sentiment across the market is that they should be where they are now going. And those two are Brian Thomas and Cam Scatabo. I don't know how I really feel about Brian Thomas, but if we look here, Brian Thomas is now going right after Parker Washington when he used to be going much later on DraftKings. How much later? Let's take a look and see. He was going over half a round, like three-quarters of a round later on um, on DraftKings. So instead of 85, he was going at sorry, instead of 65, sorry, he was going at 72. So basically at the end of that round there. What round is that? 12th, 24th. End of the sixth round, beginning of the seventh round type of thing. I don't know how I feel about him. I don't know if this is a good price or not. I didn't draft a whole lot of him his rookie year. I didn't start drafting him much at the beginning of last year at all. And then enough people talked about him, and I probably made the mistake of then starting to draft him. So I don't know how I really feel about him at all, but he's getting a lot of buzz. And I think if you want to try to get some of them before the market bakes this in completely, you want to get them now. Hopefully you get it. Like when I say get them now, I don't think you want to pull them up to get them. I think you want to hope that the market, you're in a draft where the market isn't realized there and you get a fall on him, basically. Another player that I think you want to kind of get some now is Cam Scatabo before the market continues to bake this in more. He's at pick 42.9 right now. And if you ask me, I think he's a more exciting pick than Javonte Williams at the very least. And then he can be competing with Travis Etienne or Etienne at that point in time. So he is getting rather expensive at this point in time. But if you're in a market in a draft where again the market isn't completely baked in and he falls, I think he's a player you definitely want to think about because I don't think he's going to fall again. I think he's only going to rise, and that rise will be get more like consistent as we go. I think is what's going to happen with him. I don't think you're going to see him shoot up to the second round, at least not right now. But I do expect it where he's more of like a staple at the 3-4 turn versus falling. So that's what I'd be thinking about with Cam Scatabo. Let's look at the one faller that I think is interesting, and that is where is he? He's here somewhere. Brees Hall. Brees Hall has fallen 1.5 picks over the last 7 days and half a round in the last 2 days, giving back a lot of his rise that he had. We started to get more expensive. Again, there's that news about a three-headed monster type of thing, and I think that's been debunked as far as coming from the head coach and more coming from some writers misinterpreting what was said. And eventually, the market's going to think that as well. He'll probably take back this little bit 1.5 round fall or so. And so I do think Brees Hall is a player you want to consider. In fact, he's over here on the values as well. So not only has he fallen a little bit, but that fall's made him one of the top values on DK. I think he's someone that you want to try to draft before, again, the market adjusts back and then he starts rising up that third round and getting close to like the 2-3 turn potentially. Now, what do I think right now would be like a fun God tier type start? It's not even really start as far as like round one, round two, but speaking of Brees Hall, look at this. It's going to be tough to pull off, but if you could, I think it would be awesome. Jeremiah Love is going in the third round. Brees Hall is currently going at the end of the third round. If you get a fall on Jeremiah Love, you get him kind of towards the back half of the third round. You get a little fall on Brees Hall. You get him at the beginning of the fourth round. I think that is pretty cool right there. Josh Jacobs is going at pick 44. So maybe it's not the end of the round. Let's put it this way. You get Jeremiah Love middle of the third round, Breece Hall middle of the fourth round, Josh Jacobs middle of the fifth round. It's tough to pull off, but if you can, I think that would be an awesome team to have in your portfolio. Maybe with Josh Jacobs isn't rising right now, but he's definitely not falling either. It doesn't look like on DraftKings. Okay. With that, we will see you on the next one. Good luck with your drafts. Hopefully you enjoyed the best 10 minutes in best ball. Peace.